Warfare is a mighty powerful image for the spiritual life. Some would say it's an unfortunate image to use, but it is an image Paul uses as he closes his letter to the Ephesians. Let's see what he does with it. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Saturday, January 25th, 2025. Just by way of a brief recap of the sweep of Ephesians, remember, Paul begins the letter with a summary of what he sees as God's eternal purposes and how the Ephesians themselves fit into those purposes. Having called Abraham and made a covenant with him and his offspring after him, a promise to include descendants as numerous as the stars in the heavens and a land that God would give to them, God concludes his call to Abraham with the promise that in him and through his offspring, God would bring blessing upon all the families of the earth. Though often overlooked as part of this covenant, it is this last piece that Paul emphasizes. He believes that in Jesus Christ, himself a descendant of Abraham, God was now inaugurating a new chapter in his eternal plan by now including not only Jews, but also Gentiles in the kingdom and household of God. Paul then makes an important turn in his letter, signaling as Paul often does with the word therefore. Because they have been called and chosen by God, they need to live a new life. Paul writes, I therefore, a prisoner in the Lord, beg you to live a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called. So in this section, he emphasizes the importance of unity within the community of faith, as well as living exemplary lives before their non-believing neighbors. In all of this, he emphasizes the gulf that exists between them and their Gentile neighbors. Not enmity, mind you, but distinction. After all, their very purpose is to bring to their neighbors through their faith and witness blessing. Now, as he closes the letter, he uses a metaphor that some find animating and others find troubling, but really most misinterpret. He urges the Ephesians to put on the whole armor of God, intimating that they are involved in a spiritual warfare. He writes, Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his power. Put on the whole armor of God, so that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For our struggle is not against enemies of blood and flesh, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, so that you may be able to withstand on that evil day, and having done everything, to stand firm. Stand, therefore, and fasten the belt of truth around your waist, and put on the breastplate of righteousness. As shoes for your feet, put on whatever will make you ready to proclaim the gospel of peace. With all these, take the shield of faith, with which you will be able to quench all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. There's a funny thing about metaphors, especially those used in the Bible. Some people take them literally. Notice that Paul references the commonly used Roman soldier's uniform to illustrate his point. But in using it, he is in no way urging the Ephesians to literally take up arms, and certainly not against any human beings, not even against Roman authorities, oppressive though they may be. This is the same Paul, after all, who wrote the church in Rome, Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those authorities that exist have been instituted by God. This is a metaphor, not a literal call to arms. No, spiritual warfare for Paul was not about going to war with fellow human beings. He envisioned a war against spiritual forces, whether in the form of temptation, or pride, or arrogance, or in whatever other way evil manifests itself in our lives. And in the context of Ephesians, that would include the temptation to elevate oneself as over against one's fellow believers, trying to prove oneself morally superior. This seems to have been a common temptation in the early churches, Just read Paul's letter to the Corinthians to see how this played out in the early church there. Turns out, we have enough struggle within our own souls to worry about struggling with others. Just doesn't make any sense. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.